Hello and welcome back to our virtual tour of Bella Roma. Of course, that's Rome.
Rome, it's just Rome.
It's just Rome, but it's not as fun to say.
That's true.
Rome.
Bella Rome is better.
Anyway.
Okay, so last time we talked about St. Peter's in Rome, which of course is the cathedral, right, Casey?
Wrong. The cathedral is actually St. John Lateran. Huh. Everyone knows that.
Well, who's St. John Lateran?
That's a good question, Father. So I studied in Rome. I lived in Rome. Truthfully, I have no idea who St. John Lateran is.
Little known fact, St. John Lateran actually was never a real person. The Basilica of St. John Lateran, the cathedral church, is actually dedicated in honor under the patronage of two St. Johns, St. John the Apostle and St. John the Baptist. Now you might ask yourself, who is St. John Lateran, or why the name Lateran on there? Well, it's because the area that the land was on and the area that the land was donated from was donated by a family known as the Lateran family. And so, giving thanks to them, they added the name of that family into the name of the basilica or cathedral. So, it's named St. John because it's under the patronage of two St. Johns, John the Apostle, John the Baptist, and Lateran is on there simply because it's the family that donated the land for the church to be there. So, don't ask St. John Lateran to pray for you because he can't.
So being named after John the Baptist, it must have a pretty cool baptismal font.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Casey. It does have a pretty cool baptismal font. One of the neat things is that the baptismal font actually isn't inside the church, it's just on the outside of the church. And so there's a pretty cool physical reality to the spiritual reality of what we believe about baptism. Those who are going for baptism begin just outside in the ordinary world, and then they walk into the baptistry, into the waters of baptism, and they physically go in the waters, and then they walk into the physical church. So this is the physical reality of going from the ordinary world into something extraordinary, into the church. And of course, what we believe about the sacrament of baptism is that spiritually, that same thing happens to us. We are ordinary human beings, but through the sacrament of baptism, we come from that ordinary existence into the grace of the sacrament, and we come out a new creation, an extraordinary creation, beloved sons and daughters of God. So what we see in that baptistry is a physical representation and a physical journey that shows the spiritual reality of the sacrament of baptism. Now, Casey, question for, I should say actually, here at St. Thomas Aquinas, we actually have the same reality of going from the ordinary into the extraordinary. So when you go into St. Thomas Aquinas, the first thing that you hit in the gathering space is the baptismal font. And so you go from ordinary life, you're coming from outside, coming from class, wherever you're coming from, ordinary life, and you walk in, and immediately you encounter the baptismal font. Cross yourself with holy water, because you're entering into not just an ordinary realm, but an extraordinary realm, into the Mass, into the grace of Christ, into the waters of baptism. So again, St. Thomas Aquinas has a pretty cool link with one of the most cool churches in all of Christendom. Pretty neat, huh, Casey?
It's pretty darn neat, I'd have to say so.
I thought so too. Now, another interesting thing about the baptistry at St. John Lateran is it has 8 sides. Now, Casey, why would a baptismal font have 8 sides?
Very interesting question. Of course, we don't do anything without any kind of extra meaning in the church. Mm-hmm. Everything is just soaked with extra meaning. And 8 is a really cool number. It denotes a couple of things. For the Hebrew people, they had meanings associated with every number that you can think of. And 8 meant eternity. It meant something that lasted forever, from the beginning to end. It didn't have one of those things. It just always was. And then there's an even further meaning. Of course, we all know how many days of creation there are.
Well, 7, of course, right, Casey?
Wrong. 8. Twice in one video, Father's wrong. It's a good day.
It's a good thing I got a seminarian with me.
The 8th day of creation actually refers to, of course, the resurrection, the day in which Christ restored our humanity, restored everything about us, and restored us to friendship with God. And so this 8th day, which we are born into in our baptism, is symbolized by how many sides that we have in our baptismal font. Pretty
Beautiful.
darn cool.
Born into the 8th day, born into eternity. Again, we actually have this same symbolism in our baptismal font at St. Thomas Aquinas. So when you look at the baptismal font, the very base of the baptismal font has the octagonal shape to it. So if you count the different sides, you'll see that octagonal shape. It's kind of like an oval octagon, but it's still octagonal, 8, for that eternal symbolism. Now, part of the base is kind of covered up by that tall section, but if you get the shape when you're looking at the base of it, you could count 8 sides, technically only has 7, but the symbolism is there, that the same symbolism we have at St. John Lateran, the 8 sides, the extra day of eternity, being baptized into eternity, is the same symbolism that we have at St. Thomas Aquinas. So pretty cool that our church has a connection to St. John Lateran Basilica all the way in Rome, and that baptistry that dates back hundreds of years. Well, I suppose this concludes our video on St. John Lateran, eh, Casey?
I think it does.
Well, join us next time because we're going to just go right across the street from St. John Lateran to a place called the Holy Stairs. So God bless you, and join us for our next video.